This is the Leadway Wealth Builders Podcast, episode 178, where today we're going to be breaking down how the real estate market is changing and how to keep up with it. My name is Chris Rickenbaugh, and I am documenting my journey in real estate and business, and also bringing on high-level investors to be able to share their stories and how they built their businesses. You can keep up with me on Instagram and TikTok at chris.rickenbaugh. That's chris.reichen.bach. And you can like, share, and subscribe to this podcast because that is the only way we're going to be able to grow and reach more people, to be able to raise everybody up together, learn together, and grow together. So let's hop into today's topic. And as I said in the intro, the real estate market is changing, and a lot of people are expecting to be able to sell their home and trying to do what they did a couple years ago, where houses were selling for insane prices. You could buy a house, just keep it for a couple months, and sell it for 50 grand more by not touching it. That is not today's market, and people are kind of getting behind. I'm looking and listening to a lot of other flippers who are in the same position I'm in, because the last couple houses we've had to list under asking price. And there's multiple different factors that come into it, like the condition of the house, some of the final touches on it. But we're seeing this as a complete market now, where houses are sitting on the market for a little bit longer than they normally do. And I think in our market, it's about 30 to 45 days, and people are freaking out thinking, oh my gosh, the real estate market's changing. But we're really just in a little bit of a correction, because we had those insane inflation prices a couple years ago, and now everybody's just kind of expecting the same thing. So buyers, with the rates being a little bit higher and then the prices being higher, they're kind of sitting on the sidelines and being able to be a little bit more picky. But the problem is that the sellers are still expecting those home prices and values of what they had a couple years ago. So this creates the problem of buyers are waiting for things to come down, and sellers are waiting for buyers to be able to come up. So there's a lot of waiting and a lot more days on market. So some of the advice that we've gotten recently is, if you're stuck on a price, let it sit on the market for a little bit longer. You're probably expecting 4 to 6 weeks before you really make that price drop, unless something really is crazy happening in the market. So what they're telling us as flippers is, if you're looking to sell that house quickly, which as flippers we always are, if renovations take a little bit longer, we're under the gun from hard money, we need to be able to sell that house quickly. So with the higher days on market, what they're suggesting is to be really aggressive on your price and pricing it lower. So on ours, we're listing it just a couple percentage lower than what we originally thought. So on our flip that we recently sold, we listed it at $350, and we are under contract at $330. So that creates this difference in the market to where, if we had just priced it at $335 to begin with, we probably would have been under contract within a week, or even a weekend. We would have had tons of showings. But the problem is we let it go a little bit higher, and it sat for a little bit. But there were other factors into it which I wanted to talk about too, was because, for this specific house that we had, it had a little bit of a higher days on market, but we did this price drop based on the offers that came in. So something that the realtors are telling us is that the higher, or with, the house that's coming in, here's how to interpret the data. And that is, if you're having lots of showings but no offers, it's something wrong with the house. But if you're having no showings and no offers, then it's the price. And that's something we had on this house for a little bit, because we had a few little things to be able to touch up inside the house, and that was becoming a little bit unattractive to be able to sell it. So we had to reduce our price, and then we got it under contract. So for others who, let's just say, we were able to do these lipstick rehabs and, it's not up to code with something else that's in the market. And you're trying, let's say it's a $400,000 house. It has all the bells and whistles. It's really nice. And you're thinking, oh, well, I'll just, paint, I'll put some flooring in, we can just touch up the kitchen cabinets and clean it, and I should be able to get right around that same price too. That was the market 2 to 3 years ago, but that is not what it is now. So you can't be chasing price. You're going to have to be able to lower that if you want to sell it. And that's one of the houses we're looking at right now. He thought, oh, well, I can just put a little bit of rehab into it. It should be able to sell easily. Somebody could buy it as a rental, and it'll be like the area. But the problem is, that is not the market we are in, but it could be a really beneficial flip for me because he's been holding on to it for a while. So chasing the price as you could 2 to 3 years ago, like I said, you could list it way above asking, and you would get offers above that asking price. That is not today's market. Buyers are waiting and sitting on the sidelines because they see those interest rates are up, and they also see home prices are going up. And what they're doing now is they're watching these houses get listed, and they're just watching the price come down a little bit more. And they're thinking, oh, well, since they've already lowered it, if we just wait a little bit longer, they're going to be able to lower that price for us just a little bit more. And the problem is that's not what the sellers are looking for. We need to be able to sell these homes quickly, so we need to be able to price them correctly. And what is happening if we start high on the price? Let's just say I started at $365 where I originally wanted to be. I start at that price, I would get no offers, no showings, and I would drop it down to, $355. A couple more weeks, $345. And then I come down to $335, and then it's been on the market for nearly or over 60 days at that point. And now sellers are looking at that, or buyers are looking at that property going, hey, they've done some pretty massive price reductions. We're just going to let it come down more, or we're not even going to tour the house because something must be wrong with it that they're having to cut it and cut and cut and cut. And it's also sitting on the market for a long time. And that's something that's happening with all of these normal home sellers that saw all these prices, with all of these houses sell a couple years ago. And now they're doing that same exact thing. They're listening to their realtor who made a lot of money a couple years ago, being able to sell these homes at massive prices, and now these homes are sitting. And I walked another house last week, and it was just about the same thing. I said, why does the seller want that price? And he goes, oh, well, that was my price suggestion. I said, really? And he said, yeah, we should get it. Houses sold over here a couple years ago. I said, well, a couple years ago, this is a couple years ago. And they're like, well, we know something's going to come in pretty soon here. And I'm going to offer on that house probably here in the next 3 to 4 weeks for an even bigger discount. And that's going to be a pretty solid keep and rental for us. But what we're pivoting to a little bit is we're looking at these houses going, we need to be really, really dialed in on our numbers to be able to purchase another flip, because we don't want it sitting on the market. We don't want to eat it and lose money. Another strategy we're looking into, or that I was talking about, is that we're going to be able to buy the house, we're going to renovate it, we're going to keep it as a rental for a couple years to see what the market decides to do. We'll probably have some appreciation within that time, and then we'll be able to sell it along with the paying the mortgage down a little bit. We're going to be able to make our spread in a couple years, and that's going to make flipping for us a little bit nicer. But in that time, that's why we're looking for hospitality businesses like boutique hotels, mobile home parks, or the hospitality businesses, because we need to go make our money somewhere else where real estate is getting really, really tough. If you have a lot of money, you're going to be able to make that work. But from our standpoint, in our position right now, we're looking at that going, it's not impossible, but it's going to take an insane amount of work, we think, to be able to make a living and make it through this difficult time, to where it's like we could go somewhere else. We could buy a business that already has money coming in the door. We just need to go in and operate. So that's something that we're looking at and really maybe not pivoting to. We're just looking at as another option because we know that's down the road somewhere. So we're seeing if that's the right move to be able to do right now. And we think it is. So I'm going to be able to document that journey all on this podcast for you. So make sure you stay tuned along with all of my real estate, all the interviews coming up. We have some really cool guests on and coming up. So make sure you tune in for those. But for this episode, thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you on the next one.